Hello, and welcome to the Six Figure Developer Podcast, the podcast where we talk about new and exciting technologies, professional development, clean code, career advancement, and more. I am John Calloway.
And I'm John Ash.
So, some of us have been working remotely a little bit more often than others. I have been in my home office for uh, several months these days. So, I've got a pretty good setup here. But I was wondering, um, I know that Clayton, you work remote a fair amount of time as well, and Ash, you have the ability to work from home and often choose to. So, what are the tips and tricks that come to mind that we might want to share with others that are finding themselves maybe first time or diving into remote work these days?
Yeah, I guess for me, I feel like I have tended to find that you know, I a knowing what I'm going to be doing, um, and sort of kind of planning out a list of work for myself really helps me sort of prioritize my work and sort of knowing what I'm going to do. I know we're going to talk about sort of tracking work a little bit later, but then when I'm in the mode, definitely finding things that can kind of keep me in that zone. I think we've talked a little bit about kind of getting into that zone a couple of podcasts ago. Listening to music was definitely one of those things that really helped me, and I know a lot of other people, um, just really kind of lock in and kind of stay kind of in that zone.
Yeah, and I find it really useful and helpful to have a dedicated space for your work. I've got an extra spare bedroom that I've claimed as my home office. So I've got my nice desk set up with a nice big monitor and keyboard and nice office chair. And my family knows that if I'm in my office with the door closed, then I'm likely working on something or recording a podcast or doing some mixing or something. So they understand that this is where I go to do my work and where I need to stay focused, so that hopefully I keep the distractions minimized. If you've watched the stream on Twitch, you've likely seen my kid come in the door, so they know that they can interrupt me if needed. But it's helpful to just have that dedicated space so that when you're in your office or in your space, then it's time to work. I also wanted to reiterate or mention that having reliable Wi-Fi these days is often quite helpful. I just went through updating my home setup and went with the Ubiquiti Dream Machine. So if anybody's in the market for something like that, I can't recommend that enough. It's an incredible device. Seeing speeds that haven't seen in without being right next to the router in years. So, um, would recommend something like that.
Yeah, oh, I can also back up that I've been using the Ubiquity Unify platform, which was more of the sort of stuff that that Dream Machine is based off of, and it's really really solid stuff. Um, so I was mostly just seeing a reduction in what I probably ought to be seeing, and that was actually last night. So it wasn't when I was doing work; it was more I was I was working on our podcast, mixing podcasts together. But um, yeah, I mean, fortunately, I have a pretty good networking setup so that I can pretty much get if there's something getting to my if there's internet coming to my door, I don't have any losses there, and I would say that that's a pretty big thing because if you don't have a solid network internal to your house and all of a sudden you have degradations that are external to your house, well, that creates a huge issue that sort of can compound the issue. So um, that would be the way that I've sort of mitigated things mostly. But today I was even seeing um, where, you know, I think it was Skype and um, Teams. I think Teams maybe went down for some people for part of the day. And Skype, I was definitely seeing like reduced my networks was fine, but the Skype networking with the Skype application itself, I was seeing reduced network performance, and I think that's just because of the incredible load. So many different people are working from home. So many people are using those tools probably way more than they were normally using.
Yeah, I typically utilize Teams, sometimes Slack, and often Zoom as a backup, and even GoToMeeting from time to time
Hmm.
when other services are failing or others don't have experience with them. Yeah, so any of those have the ability to jump on a call, jump on a video call, is often helpful to share in the non-visual or non-verbal communication and see people's expressions. Can often help figure out if they're being sarcastic or
Yeah.
not, and it just helps identify the people that maybe need a little bit more communication and social interaction. I also find that I have been scheduling long lunches on my calendar for many months now. So between 11 to 2, my calendar is blocked off so that if we're not in a quarantine situation, then I do have the ability to go and meet people outside the house for lunch or a quick bite or something like that, or just gives me the ability to not be roped into meetings and run out and run any errands that I need to do, or maybe focus on a particular problem without any interruptions. So scheduling time like that can often help as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Some of the one of the other tools. Skype for Business, Skype, and Discord would be three other tools that we hadn't mentioned that do that same thing. So one other kind of interacting, and I think this is something that is really difficult, is in the whiteboarding space. So like if you're trying to brainstorm ideas or brainstorming, maybe doing like a retrospective or something like that. One of the tools that my team has used in the past, and this is primarily because we're multi-located. So even though I'd go into the office, I'm still working together with people over in Poland and other locations. But Ural.co is a nice tool that allows you to sort of like write sticky notes and sort of put them in different quadrants and arrange them up and sort of have that sort of textile feel that you can like just put up sticky notes. You can be anonymous and write whatever you want on them. That allows for like the brainstorming sessions. I don't know that I found an application that really gives you great sort of whiteboarding sessions, but maybe you guys have heard of something, but that probably is going to be pretty difficult since you'd have to have some sort of like writing ability to. I don't know that even with as good as like the pens are these days, that too many people are breaking out a Surface Pen or a Amazon or a Apple Pencil or whatever to try to like whiteboard with each other across the internet. Mm-hmm.
So what about working together, working collaboratively remotely? Are there specific tools that you guys have used when looking for help with particular problems or looking for help with code problems? Yeah, a couple of the teams that I've worked with, when people have said, "Oh, well, let's jump on Teams or Zoom or Slack or whatever," um, one of the video or screen sharing uh, services and trying to share that way, then I'd try to read my audience and see if they're in favor of taking a suggestion of live share. And I've had mixed success, but pretty good success from time to time on getting some individuals interested in, and reminding them that exists,
Hmm.
and working together in live share. And If people are open to it, it typically turns out to be a really good experience. It's just not everyone is set up in in order to utilize live share. Maybe they're using a different editor or something like that, or an older device that can't manage it. But that's been either using a service like live share or just sharing a screen on Teams is primarily my experience.
So recently, I have not really been doing a whole lot of coding. So most of my stuff has been more environmental. And with that, unfortunately, pretty much like a screen capture, screen share situation is about the best that I can do. But my team, especially since we are having to be a lot more remote, everyone's remote, and we can't just like reach over and talk to each other and look at my screen. We specifically said in our sort of preparatory meeting, hey, let's take a look at this live share feature and let's sort of learn how to leverage that, because we're going to be working together closely and trying to like find better improve our ways of having to work remote with each other. And so, maybe this will be the thing that kind of gets a lot of these teams over the hump, to adopt that new, better workflow.
And there's also kind of asynchronous ways to get help with code, right? We could create a pull request. We can check in to a feature
Absolutely.
branch.
Oh, that's a
And
perfect. Yeah. No, go ahead. Continue. Sorry.
yeah, so we can check into a feature branch and get help. And maybe if we're working with truly separate teams in separate continents and separate time zones, maybe it's this is as far as I've gotten. This is my feature branch. This is the state of it. Feel free to pick up from there, and maybe they take it carried across the goal line.
Yeah, I think that you bring up a really good point there, because I think having good pipeline practices, having good, you know, software repositories are excellent, and I think that really does a ton to allow teams to be uh, to be working at their most effective kind of flow. So great point. Mm.
Nobody calls it ADO. The last in office position I held, I would carry around a small notebook and just make myself a checklist of these are the 10 items that I plan on doing today, or these are the 5 items that I plan on doing tomorrow. And there's a certain amount of a sense of accomplishment that you feel being able to check off those things and being able to do it in the physical world as opposed to the virtual world or the world of computers and uh, applications and cloud technologies and those types of things, that can actually kind of divorce us from that feeling of accomplishment. So I really enjoyed carrying around the notebook and physically checking off the items that I had. But that said, I have used applications like Trello. Most of the projects I work on these days are in Azure DevOps, so we typically keep a pretty good DevOps board going um, and a task board going and checking off the tasks and moving those to completion. And being able to track that ourselves, being able to track that myself, and being able to show others on the team the state of the application, the state of the feature is also quite helpful as well.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Azure DevOps. I think that it gets underutilized. Just the anything from the dashboards to like having quick snapshots of what's going on to the wikis that it has, so you can have team repositories of knowledge. You obviously have repos, you have the pipelines that it can do, the boards, and being able to. There's a ton of extensions that you can put in. Like we had been I was talking about murals. We'd been using murals for the longest time, but we've now switched over to just using. There's a repository or a retrospective, plugin that you can use to build your retrospective. Estimating all gets done inside of Azure DevOps for us, and so really using that tooling to collaborate a ton, being able to show exactly what's happening on the board. But I think, John, you did bring up a great point about the having a notebook, and that is something that's sort of like the first place that I go, or I've gone, and I've in the past like had difficulty sort of taking those notes or taking note taking in general, and I might call out the method called bullet journaling, if you've ever heard of that. It's an excellent way of sort of collapsing the notes and the important meetings and also the action items and whatnot, and being able to continuously create a process for you to keep going back to that notebook and going through the things that you have. So you don't have to get like a bullet. There's companies that sell bullet journals, but you can just use like any notebook that you buy off the shelf and just sort of set it up yourself. And I'd highly recommend people taking and using that if they really like writing things down or want to have something sort of more physical to feel like they've accomplished something.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you've been using the Pomodoro technique for a number of years and seem to be uh, really benefiting from that level of uh, rigidity. And do you feel that you have accomplished more since you've been utilizing the Pomodoro technique? Mm. Mhm.
Mm, mm,
Mm. And I think it's important too to mention and to really reemphasize the part of the Pomodoro technique is taking the 5 minute break, taking the 15-minute break, and wanted to spend a little bit of time doubling down on that, saying that breaks are important, especially these days. While it seems like the majority of us are all working remotely, it's important that we do take breaks and that we take care of ourselves. And a couple of episodes ago, we talked about the distracted developer and the idea of hyper focus and losing track of time and losing ourselves in the work. So it's important to take a break. So types of things that we might do during a break, or like just take a walk, get up from our desks. What are the types of things that you guys do to make sure that you're taking care of yourself?
I specifically like to go get a snack, but that's just me. Um, I find that, yeah, I mean, it sort of gives me everything. It gives me a chance to take a break and walk over, and then I get a little bit of something salty or sweet to kind of just give me some new sensations, and get something to drink, maybe something with caffeine or something cold. But that really kind of helps me just sort of separate myself from whatever I was doing, and kind of reset for another uh, chunk of time to kind of hit it again. Hmm.
Yeah, and I often during my break time, I take the opportunity to go downstairs, let the dog out, maybe walk around the backyard with the dog as it barks at me because it's a jerk. And then maybe water some plants or something like that, and just enjoy being outside and enjoy some fresh air for a few minutes, and then energizing myself with a little bit of sunshine, and then coming in and feeling a little bit rejuvenated, a little bit renewal, and getting back to work at that point.
I kind of we kind of talked about it, and I think a little bit at the very beginning. But like, my environment is a big thing for me as far as like maintaining that focus and maintaining. I want to make sure that it's sort of clean. We talked, John, you talked about like having a dedicated space.
Mm.
I kind of like having a couple different ways of even sitting in that dedicated space. I think it's important that people don't do things like go sit on the couch, go sit on your bed. Um, those sorts of can be very confusing for your brain, especially like people say not to like read or watch movies in bed and that sort of thing. Like, that's for your sleeping. But it really isn't when you don't have a place where you can have good posture, good ergonomics, you're going to struggle and you're going to not perform at your best. So find ways of sitting and fitting in those areas where it's a healthy spot, and be able to change those healthy positions from time to time. Whether it's
because you could develop skeletal issues and maybe have to have surgery to fix some of them. So it's very good advice. Yeah, but most importantly, be sure to take care of yourself. Find show notes, blog posts, and more at sixfiguredev.com.
And be sure to follow us on Twitter at sixfiguredev.
This has been another episode of the Six Figure Developer Podcast, helping others reach their potential. I am John Calloway.
And I'm John Nash.